Okay, hi everybody. This is Mr. Frazier giving you a quick review of the economic basics that you're going to need throughout the year for our geography class. Today we're only going to focus on the most simple understanding of the forces inside economics and the different types of economies we'll look at throughout the year. I'm not going to pretend that I have a script ready for today's lesson, so please be patient with me as we fumble around for the right words to say and as we learn it together. So, economics. When we look at economics, we're really looking at the study of how people meet their wants and needs. And what this really refers to generally is goods and services. And goods and services are any products that we can produce, grow, or find. And services would be anything that's provided to another individual. This is labor, work. There are three questions that need to be answered. The first one is what goods and services should be produced? And by this we mean what are we going to make or sell? The second one is how should goods and services be produced? So these are the means of making it. Who's going to make it and how? And then we have who uses or consumes these goods and services. Each of these three questions is answered in a different way, but the study of this, the study of the goods and services and how they're distributed, is called economics. So the driver of economics is really this thing called scarcity. And what scarcity really decides is how the economy will function. Scarcity is the difference between what really is available and what people want. We'll add the A and the T here. And what people want. Today we're going to use for our example apples. Apples are a fruit everybody loves. I love apples, especially in the fall. So let's think of apples. The more apples that are available to the population, the less they're desired. And what we mean by this is the more scarce a resource is, the more valuable it is, the more people are willing to pay. This is based upon this idea of supply and demand. Supply and demand we're going to show with this graph right here, and we're going to give you an example in just a moment. As you can see from this graph, however, the less there is of an item, the more the price will be. And the more there is of an item, the less the price will be. This is because of the idea of competition. So let's take a look. We're going to look at an example with apples. Yummy. Alright, so we're looking at apples, and we can notice that as the quantity or the amount of apples goes up, the price goes down. So you can imagine numbers up and down the x and y axis. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then conversely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. If we have 3 apples available and only 2 people, obviously there's more quantity than need or want or desire. So we're gonna look at a bigger example, however. Let's pretend we have a country of 100 people. And with this country of 100 people, there are 200 apples available. You'll notice that if there's 200 apples available, there's plenty of competition. If you don't like the price of the seller of apples at cart A, let's say, or grocery store A, you could go down the street and probably find apples for cheaper somewhere else. This is because you know, and so do the sellers, that there's always more apples available because you have so many in your economy. But now let's think about it like this. If we have 200 people, on any given day there's only, let's say, 250 apples available. We now have decreased the quantity or the amount available. And so we know by supply and demand that the price is going to go up. And the reason for this is quite simple, because if we look at it, we can realize that if you do not buy the apples from that first seller, there is a large possibility that you won't be able to find another seller of apples because there's little competition. We saw this before with the example of Xbox. Yes, Xbox. When this first came out, when Xbox first came out, the price of the gaming system was quite high. It was approximately $500, and it's going to be again with the new Xbox One for all you gamers out there. So we have a $500 system. And this is because it's very scarce. There's not many available. And the desire for this item is quite high. And the reason it's desirable is not so much that it's new, although that plays into it. It's the fact that there's not a lot of them available. People like to be first. People like to get their items. However, as you get more and more Xbox Ones available at stores, and as you have other devices like the PS4 and other gaming systems popping up and becoming more and more competitive, the price will slowly drop, perhaps to $3.99, and then maybe even eventually to $2.99. And what this means is, as the quantity of Xboxes or their competition, goes up, the price has to actually go down. The concept of supply and demand works separately with every item inside of an economy. And these rules hold true throughout humanity and throughout the conditions we'll see throughout the world. When we talk about coffee in Colombia, or we talk about bananas from Southeastern Asia, we're really talking about a product that has a value depending on how scarce it is. So how do societies deal with scarcity? There are four main categories of economy, and what that means is the way in which they organize themselves. And they deal with scarcity in their own ways. Although some nations might do something similar, they might divide their resources similar, no two countries are actually alike. Now there are four different examples we'll look at today. 1, 2, 3, 4. And each of these is different and yet similar. So we want to make sure you're paying careful attention to the different characteristics of these, and I'd like for you to also make sure that you have your note sheet ready. So, traditional economy. When we're looking at a traditional economy, we're really looking at an economy where people make their economic decisions based on customs and habits. So again, traditions. These kinds of economies usually are related to hunting, farming, and gathering. And the reality is that very few of these economies exist today. Now, the reason they don't exist is due to modern times and items that have become popular and different things like colonialism. So, we may not see many modern societies that follow these economies. But as we study the histories of different areas of the world in our geography class, we will see how traditional economies interacted and also were eventually taken over by these other types of economies. So this is very important for us to look at. So again, traditional economies based on customs, habits, usually hunting, farming, and gathering. The second type is market economy. Market economies usually have individual consumers and producers making economic decisions. This is the purest form of our supply and demand chart. Make my little arrows here. So, what this is also called is capitalism. And I apologize, let me erase that. Capitalism. And in capitalism, or market economies, we encourage people to create businesses. The idea behind a market economy is this. As individuals produce new products or make new resources or services, let's say Xbox, people will either want to buy it or not. And the people who make decisions on what is made, which is produced, and what is bought, Let me write that. Made. Bought. The people who make that decision is the individuals, the people themselves, the people who produce and the people who buy. And so it's a very open system. And what happens is any problems that occur, they are actually solved by the economy itself. So what that means is if somebody is poor, the idea in a market economy is that we do not give them items unless an individual wants to. The government does not give them items. And also, if a company is struggling, the only person who can help it is those who buy the products from the company. And so, in a market economy, any problems in society are either solved or left alone. Solved or left alone, and the ones who make the decision are the people. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get this to work here. There we go. The third type of economy we have to look at is the command economy. In these economies, we have a government who makes the economic decisions. What we mean by the government is we mean the leaders of the government. They determine who produces and who consumes. And when the government makes these decisions, the individuals, the people themselves, have no say. Now, this seems beneficial to many people, and in some cases, countries have adopted this. The problem is that it has a history of leading to abuse. The reason for the abuse seems pretty self-evident. When you leave decisions of what people should get or should not get up to a small amount of people, like the government, they often want to keep these resources for themselves or their friends and not distribute them fairly. The other issue is that, as you saw with your candy activity, there's often not enough resources to go around for the citizens. And therefore those in government tend to have all the resources and, in order to maintain control, usually hurt the rights of their people. Lastly, we have this thing called the mixed economy. The mixed economy is the most common in the world. And this is because there's no such thing as a pure or only market and command economy. They just don't exist. And in mixed economy, what they do is they take the best they can, or they feel they can, from market and the best they think they can from command, and they combine them to form their economy. The best example of this is the United States. In the United States, we have a mixed economy. So, for example, what we do is we have a market economy, and businesses and individuals will actually decide what is made and what is not made. But at the same time, the United States has a command economy. And the government actually decides with taxes who needs help or what needs help. So for example, our government will build roads, bridges. They will give money to those in need through welfare and other programs. Mixed economies are often the very best way to run an economy. And you'll see many examples of this throughout our year. So, I apologize. So anyway, I hope that you were able to learn something from what we did today when we looked at economic basics here. And would like for you to hand in your note sheet to me so that I know we're on the same page. If you need to rewind, make sure you rewind and rewatch any section where you were confused. And if you have any questions, please contact me in class. Bye-bye.